Once we've done all of our sanding on this with our random orbiter, come back with some 220 and just hit everything and give it a nice last sanding with some 220. So that's what I'm doing here. Once you've got it well sanded and everything looks good, all these edges have to be broken. They always end up feeling rather sharp. So take your 220 at this point and just go around. It doesn't take much at all to break that sharp corner. So just hit it really quickly with your 220, about like so, all the way around. Now I'm going to take 2 paper towels, nice heavy duty paper towels, not cheap ones. I'm going to spritz these down. And just get them a little damp and then go over everything. This will raise the grain a bit, it'll clean everything off. Alrighty, now I'm going to hit this one more time with my 220 after it dries, because it got little fuzzies sticking up, not too much, but just a little bit, and then we're ready to put our finish on it once this dries off in a minute. Alrighty, we're going to get ready to put some finish on these guys. I make a tool like this. It's just a piece of wood with a string on it, and on this end I put a piece of angle iron on there, right angle, and then I put that in my mortise like so, and I just drill a little hole in this block and put a screw in there. That allows me to hang this. Once it's screwed on, then I can hang it to dry while it's got the finish on it. Also, it gives me a handle to hold on to the guitar while I'm finishing it too. So, again, I make these and just put them in here on these guitars like so. So, first thing I'll do is just drill a hole, and I'm not too particular here. I'm going to put my 2 bolt-on holes in here eventually, but this hole, I'm going to kind of put it up high and out of the way. I haven't ever had a problem with it being an issue to have this hole in there. I don't need to go clear through, so it doesn't necessarily show on the other side. But and just a wood screw into there. There we go. So now I've got a nice handle so I can hold it while I'm finishing it, and then I can hang it up like that, like so, when I'm ready to start letting it dry. And I'll do the same with this guitar. Alrighty, now I've got these bench, these are bench cookies by Rockler, and they're nice to have. I also have made my own. Look something like this, just some piece of plywood with some soft foam that I glued on each side, and I'll put those down. Another way to keep it up off the bench. So alrighty, I'm all sanded. I'm all ready to go here. Everything feels good. I always do my back and sides first and do my top last. Top's going to soak up more of this. We're going to use the true oil and this stuff right here. I love it, I love it, I love it. If you're looking on the internet and hearing about finish work, there's what's called pore filling. Not all woods, maple, for example, isn't an open-grained wood. The rosewoods are, the mahoganies are. Your spruces aren't open-grain, but the more I'm around guitars and the more I see, the more, and this is one of the few things that I talk about being agnostic about all this stuff, but I really think that the thick, shiny finishes on guitars are not helping the guitar at all. I think it's a detriment to the sound. And what kind of really swayed me towards this was several years ago, Collings Guitars came out with a line of guitars called Waterloo. Martin followed suit soon after with a series of guitars that are very lightly finished, and you can see the open grain in the wood. They did not pore fill, and so it's just the natural wood with a really light finish on it. And they're my favorite guitars being made today. They are just great sounding guitars that when you pick them up, they're light, they're responsive, you strum them and they just like pour out sound. They're just wonderful guitars, and they do not have heavy, high gloss, thick finishes on them. And where they've pore filled these things, a lot of the pore fills, a lot of people these days are using these epoxies as a pore fill, and not only is epoxy kind of heavy and thick and to put it into the grain, but it's time consuming. You have to, some of the people talk about putting epoxy all over the guitar 2 or 3 times to get all the grain filled. So not only does it seem to me to be detrimental to the sound, but it's a pain in the butt because it's a lot of work to do that. So I've really become a fan of the true oil, and there's a lot of people that are on the same page as this. So I do not pore fill, and I just rub on my true oil. Now I'm going to show you how I do this. It's real simple, but when I get to the point a couple steps down with the finishing, I'm going to talk to you about how to look at the finish and how to soften it and how to make it be lustrous and really give you a great finish. So this is the stuff. I'm just a big fan of this, and the sound, it just is natural. It just is, I think, just lets the guitar breathe and do what it wants to do. So I'll take my new thing of True Oil, and I'll take a punch and just punch a small hole in the top. Don't open this thing clear up. That's all you need, because this stuff will harden, it will dry out. And then just take a piece of cotton cloth, tear up a t-shirt or buy some cotton at your local hardware store, and then you're just going to start putting a little bit of this on here. It's going to soak into the cloth, and then you're just going to take and rub it on. You're going to take and put your oil on your cloth and start rubbing it in. And you just want to do the whole instrument. Rosewood always turns much darker once you start putting finish on it. All woods will get darker as you put finish on them. This rosewood, it gets real dark. As it dries, it lightens a bit, but it's never going to be this pretty again, that kind of soft color. Now you want to watch that you get everything covered, and make sure you don't have any spots that are excessively wet with finish. You want to make sure you go over everything and smooth it all out. Some areas will soak up the finish more than others. The spruce on the top will really soak it up, and especially if you have like a cedar top or redwood top, it really absorbs a lot of finish. So usually on those kind of tops, I'll put a couple, 3, 4 more coats of finish than what I would put on my back and sides. Now the main thing to always watch for is that you don't get drips on your sides. So always go around and clean up your sides. And when you're doing your sides, be sure it's not running down onto your back. So come back, and that's the main thing to watch for, drips that are running onto, again, either the side or the back or the top. So And the first coat's going to soak in more than the next few coats will. I'm going to set those finished edges on those blocks just to keep them up off of the towel. Not that it's a big deal, because we're going to come back and break this down with 4/0 steel wool, and that will rub most of the lint and things that might end up in the finish, dust particles, what have you. I'm going to go back and just make sure we don't have any runs here on the back, and then it's all smooth. Good. Now I'm going to set those on there. Now I'm going to do my top, but notice how much purple I've got in this rag, so I don't really want to use this on that top. So here's another piece of cloth. We'll start with this. You could wear gloves doing this if you want, latex gloves. Now this is a lot harder to see where you've been. Doesn't show up as dark. So be careful to just make sure you're watching every place. Kind of do it in sections. I usually think about them in quarter sections. The upper bout, the lower bout. Treble side, the bass side. Look into the light, make sure you get everything nice smooth through your edges so there's no drips. Flip that around. So there you go. You can see how easy that is to put on. Again, just watch. You don't have to build it heavy. You just get it to soak in. Check all your edges, front and back and top and side, so you make sure you don't have any runs. Same exact procedure. This is my 3-piece pine wood top guitar, made from a bookcase. Usually one of these bottles will do a couple guitars. Allow you to put 3 or 4 or 5 coats on one guitar easily. I think you can do two guitars fairly easily with one of these bottles with multiple coats. So don't think you have to buy the big bottle. In fact, I wouldn't buy the big bottle. They sell this is 3 ounces, I don't know, an 8 or 12 ounce bottle. And it's just going to go bad before you use it all. So buy the small bottles. Oh, the mahogany's so pretty. It's got some nice figuring in it. I don't know if you can see all of that, but I love mahogany. It's the best. Okay, kids, when you're done with your True Oil, really wipe this off good, the top of it, because it'll really stick bad as it dries. So I, again, try and wipe it off good and snug it up because you don't want air to get in there. So when you're done, you want to take your rags and just lay them out like this on the floor. Don't wad them up and throw them in the garbage. Because some of the finished products, it's just make it a habit to do that with all your finished products, because some of them will combust if you wad them up tight and have other rags around. They'll get hot and they can start fires. So always lay your rags out, let them dry, and then throw them away, or throw them in a bucket of water or something like that. So anyway, there's the 2 guitars we just put finish on, banging up against each other. The rosewood and the mahogany. Get 2 or 3 coats on, and then we're going to start breaking it down and then talk about how to look at the finish and how to treat it to give you a really nice lustrous finish. Anyway, so it's got 2 coats on it. At this point, you could put 2 or 3 coats on as we did. Then get some 4O steel wool. 4O meaning this is the finest steel wool there is, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 O's, and it says fine, and you can get up to coarse like a number 3, but for finish work, buy 4O steel wool, and take your, and you can get this at Menards or your big box store. And so now we're going to come back. This feels a lot of stuff from the atmosphere and raising the grain a bit and all sorts of things. So it feels a little rough at this point. So come back with your steel wool and just lightly go over this. You can feel the difference right away. Wipe it off a bit, and it's a lot smoother now, and that's what you want, just nice and smooth. Be sure to get your edges good. This is an area that a lot of attention needs to be done to these edges here, because if you don't get those good, they show up in the light as being a little not quite taken care of. And so just be sure to come back and hit all your edges good. Work across them. Don't go across your grain. Work with the grain at this point. And you can feel it makes a big difference to the feel. And if you feel an area that feels a little rough, go back and hit it so it all has the same feel. So there you go. Now this is rougher. Same idea here. again, at this point you want to feel it, but also you can look at it, get it in the light just right, and you'll see where you've been and where you haven't been at some level. But that all feels really nice. We're going to do, this feels a little rougher right there. I'm going to hit that some more. Okay, that all feels really nice. So now we're ready to put our third coat of finish on, and I'll probably do 2 more coats, and then I'll start hitting it again. And after about 4 or 5 coats, you might be ready to be finishing it. In other words, be done with putting on more stuff. The final thing is we're going to really work it with our 4-0 steel wool to bring out the luster, and I'll talk about that when we get to that point. But for now, I'm going to put on another coat of finish here. Starting on the back again, get a small cloth. Alrighty, let's do our sides. Make sure I don't have any runs around my edges. Alrighty. Now we'll do the top. Fold my cloth over. It's harder to see where you've been on the top, so look into the light to make sure you get everything. Okay, I'm looking in the light. All looks good. Check my edges. And there's a little drip there. Check these edges again. I want to look at them all in the light. Alright, all looks good. So there we go. Nice third coat of finish. Starting to build, starting to look good. Okay, let's spin it. That's the third coat. You can see it's starting to build sheen and luster, and we're gonna not have it be shiny like that fresh oil. We'll have it more satin and lustrous, and it will look gorgeous. And open grain. I love open grain. So that's our third coat. Next we're going to probably put on another coat just like this, let this one dry. Again, your drying time is going to depend on a lot on the weather. If it's humid out, it'll maybe take a couple days to dry. Right now it's March where I'm at right now, and so this will dry overnight easily. And then I'll put on a second coat tomorrow. That'd be 4 coats, and then I'll break it down again with my steel wool, and then we'll start thinking about our last coat or 2. Okay, kids, here we go. I've got my 4O steel wool, and I've got about 5 coats of True Oil on this body. So I'm going to work, I usually work in quarters or, sections about like so. And I'm going to start now buffing this down for the last time. It has a fairly high sheen on it right now. I don't know if you can kind of see that. But I want to dull all that down. Now the trick here is learning how to look into the light with your steel wool as you're working. I don't know if we'll be able to show that there, but no, not yet. So, but I can see it's starting, this is getting much duller than that already. So I'm just going to take my 4O steel wool and keep working on this. Now the trick is, with this open grain, to make it really look nice, is when I tilt this up and look down into my grain, and particularly if I want to get it in the light right, if I see anything in the area I've just done that's shiny, which means it's down into the grain, then I want to get rid of the shine. Any little speck, any open grain piece, you want to keep rubbing this until you dull that shininess. That way when you pick it up ultimately and look at it, it's got a nice satin sheen to it. If there's little shiny specks showing up through your open grain, doesn't look good. So it's not just about getting everything flat, it's about flattening everything down to where it's all the same shininess. It all has the same luster to it. Again, you don't want any open grain shininess showing through. One of the hardest parts of that is around all your edges. You really want to spend time getting right up into your edges on all this. And again, you want to do this till you dull all the shininess. And you want to, again, take it and put it in the light. I can see in the light good that's starting to happen. So I'm just going to have at this like so. Even though I've worked hard on some of these edges, I've never gotten to the point where I've gone through my finish into the wood with this 4O steel wool. I think it'd be kind of hard to work this so hard that you went down into the wood and thus have to re-oil. But you can work this really, really nicely on these edges, and it'll just turn satiny on you. As long as you get all the little shiny specks out of it. That's the key to this, to really having it look nice. So I'm just going to keep working. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see the difference. Yeah, you can kind of tell, I think, that right in through here, all the way up to this edge, is duller than the rest of it. You can see the shine down here, but not so much up here. So that's what you want. And then you just take a paper towel and buff that a bit. And then when you look at it, it's just got a lovely, lovely, soft sheen to it. So that's the trick, is just to make sure you get rid of anything that's a shiny dot or pinhole or anything that's down in the open grain. You want to buff this down to where you get rid of all that, and it's all the same flatness that you have here. There you can see the ones, this side's duller than this side down here. This is what's pretty, not this. This is all right, but boy, this is so much nicer when you get it like that, and then buff it out with your paper towel or soft cloth, and boy, you have a beautiful satiny sheen on there that looks very professional. Again, look, get your light just right. Make sure you're looking into this areas on all your edges, and make sure you get rid of anything that's shiny. Any little pinprick, any little open grain. Work it until that shininess is gone. I'm looking and looking and looking at all my areas as I buff it out. Hold it up in the light so that you can really see across the front, the top, and then just work until everything gets unshiny. I'm lucky I got a big window here. I get good light, but when you set it up in your shop to do this, make sure you've got some lights that you can really move this around and look into the top, because that's going to make the difference of a nice finish. It's all about looking into the light and smoothing everything off. But it doesn't take a lot of time to buff this top down with this 4-0 steel wool. Matter of fact, I think that looks pretty good there. Now you can see it all has a nice luster to it. I would come back with the paper towel and buff this down a bit. But there we go. I don't know how well you can see this, but it's really sweet. Got a nice luster on it. Looks very professional. No runs, no drips, no shiny parts, and it feels great. It's just really nice. It doesn't have that grip that a lot of shiny tops have that are the high gloss, where it's like this. This is just smooth as a baby's butt. So there you go. That's the trick. Now, if you wanted to polish this, you could do that. I like this Meguiar's. It's the number 4, they call it heavy cut cleaner. I use this in the shop all the time for repairs to clean. It's the best cleaner if you've got a really dirty guitar. This stuff's great. Now this is a heavy cut, so it doesn't leave a high gloss, but you can buy, Meguiar's has shinier and shinier glosses, finer and finer grits to them. But on an open grain guitar, depending on the grain and the wood, sometimes this leaves little specks down in the open grain. So test a little area of it, because it's a mess if it's filled with open grain and you get this polish in there and you can't get it out, or you have to really sand it out again. So test it if you use it, but but I could bring this up in shininess a bit if I wanted with this. I like the way it looks here. I like this satin feel to it. So I'm not going to buff it with anything other than, a nice heavy-duty paper towel, and I'm just thrilled with my finish here. So that's the whole dang deal. You saw us put how to apply this stuff. This is that True Oil. This stuff which again, I just love it dearly. It's a great finish. It's light. I haven't put a lot of weight into the guitar with the grain filling product. Not that it would be a lot of weight, but I think everything adds up. So there you go. That's the trick. Now you're going to do your sides. Same thing. Get rid of all the shininess. And then your back, same thing. And you're done. Once you get all that buffed out with your 4O steel wool, it's just a gorgeous finish, and it's a professional finish. Nobody's going to argue with this finish on it, unless they want a high gloss finish. Then you've got to try other products. I've used the KTM9 that LMI sells, which is a brush-on lacquer they call it, and I've had good results with that. I like it, but it's a lot more work than this, and this just, I mean, it's so simple. It's so great. Learning to finish is a whole nother aspect to this thing. And what I've just shown you here with the finishing is really simple, sounds great, looks great, and you saw how simple that process was. So I highly recommend it. I don't think I'll ever use anything else again when I build. I just like it that much for so many reasons. So anyway, that's the final step in the finishing process that we started with our True Oil, just putting it on. I do want to say one thing more, and I forgot to mention this early on, and I got thinking about too many other things, video and all these other issues when I started finishing these 4 guitars. But a good thing to do before you put your True Oil on is put on just one, maybe 2 layers of shellac. And I buy this stuff at at the big box store. I like the amber a lot. It adds a nice color into the project, but here it is in a clear form, transparent. But what the shellac does when you put it over your wood is it makes the colors pop, particularly if you're using any water-based polys, which I don't recommend, but I've used those before over mahogany in particular. It just dulls the mahogany, makes it look terrible. If you put some shellac over it first and then use your poly over that, the shellac really lets the color pop, and it kind of seals the water-based polys from dulling out the finish. So shellac I like a lot. And the way I put it on, so again, I wish I'd have shown this before I got carried away, but when I put my shellac on, here's one of the issues with shellac that's problematic. So one of the issues that's I find a pain in the butt with shellac is you'll dip it into your shellac after you stir it up good, and then you'll start putting this on. And then you put it in and you start putting some more. What happens is, wherever your brush stroke ends up, there's usually a pile of the residue of the material on your brush. And then when you do something else and you come back here, then it starts to smear this part. The shellac naturally doesn't seem to want to just lay down nice and flat. There's always brush stroke ends in it. Not always, but often. Unless you work really fast, and that can be problematic. So what I've come up with, and I love this, and I've not seen anybody else doing this, but I'm sure other people have thought of it. You can buy these little rollers for, $1 or $2. Get them, they come with a little pan, roll it in the pan, and then when you roll this stuff on, when you roll the shellac onto your top, boy, it just all lays down nicely. You don't have those end of the brush stroke marks that you normally get with shellac, because it dries fairly quickly. And once you have that mark, then you can't take it out by putting more on it, and you end up with an area that then you got to come back and sand down, and then maybe you go through it. So this is a great idea with shellac. Matter of fact, I would think you could put on a lot of shellac with this thing and just roll it on, and it lays down, and you always have a good amount in there. You touch it up and it keeps moist. It doesn't dry out like the brush does so quickly. And so you can really lay your shellac down great with one of these. Again, watch around your edges for runs, or any areas that would pile up, but you can go back over with your wet roller, and boy, it just does a great job with the shellac. Again, 1 or 2 coats of shellac and you're done. I like it just to make my color pop. That's the only reason. And I love the amber on a clear top. So like a white spruce top, for example. So I like my shellacs. Now I'm going to talk about one other thing. StewMax sells this. It's called, it's their color tone, and this particular one's medium brown. This stuff you can get in black and browns and ambers and all different colors. I'm not sure if it's water-based, but it's water-soluble. It'll break down with water. And I've been doing, and I'll post a picture here of a guitar that I did that just turned out neat, and I made it look kind of malted, as if it was antiqued, for example. And I'm using this kind of a stain for that. Now, so what happens is I'll put a little on my cloth and start rubbing it in. And where I start rubbing it in, it really just is dark. But the trick to that stuff is come back with your rag and spritz it with just plain water. And then you can go into that area that seemed like you got way too much on it, and that water will start wiping it away. And you can just keep working that stuff, and you can make a nice sunburst. You can do a lot of things with water and this liquid stain. You wouldn't necessarily start with your dark stain here. You would do your edges. It's going to look terrible when you first do it, but trust me, if you keep applying water and work those, you'll start softening the edges. You'll start taking some of that color back up with the water, and then you can really blend your sunburst. You could add the second color and do the same thing and work those 2 colors in together with the water. It's pretty neat. I wouldn't advise it on your first guitar, but get a piece of spruce and sand it really smooth like you would your top, and then play with this stuff. Trust me, it really does a nice job of doing a rubbed on sunburst, for example, and just to give an antique pattern, which I like. Read about sunburst, look at sunburst, understand how they work, or what they're supposed to look like. And this is a neat product for doing a rubbed on sunburst. But it's a little bit beyond the scope of this particular session. But that's another thing to think about. Play with it, and trust me, use your water once you get it on there to smooth it out, to blend it. It's really neat. So I love this stuff. By the way, here's a little trick that I do with my color tone. Comes in these bottles. It never fails. When I have the lid off, I tip it over and spill stain all over everything. So I make these little blocks that it'll sit in and keep it from falling over easily. I also put my paintbrush that I use with this for touch-up work, that I put right here with it. I dip it in there to show the color, and I keep those 2 together. I don't want to stick this brush in my black, for example, and then next time I use my brown, it bleeds back in there. I don't clean these up, because as soon as I put it in this stuff, it starts to soften and makes it pliable again. So for again, for repair work mostly, which I do a lot of, I'll have my brush and my holder right there. Here's another one, for example. This is my amber and the brush that goes with it. I don't want to put my amber brush into my darker brown. Next time I put it in there, I'll have brown, not amber. So make a little holder, put a brush that stays with that bottle. Just that's a tip that I figured out years ago. So anyway, there you go. You saw me do the top of this. You saw how nicely it turned out and how easily it turned out, and I'm ready to put the neck on this. I'm going to come back and scrape off my bridge. Once I get my bridge once I make a bridge for this, I'll figure out where it goes, and I'll put some masking tape to show where I'm at, and then I'll take one of my X-Acto knives and just lightly score around that, and then I'll come back with I usually use a chisel that I hold like this, and then just start scraping that finish off of there, and then I'll sand it with some fairly heavy-duty sandpaper and clean that all up, and then glue that guy back down on there. There's some products that they use overseas when they're building inexpensive guitars where they actually use the finish as the glue, but in this case you don't want to glue to the finish, so you scrape this off, and you can't glue this down first and then expect to get a good finish when you're done, because when we talked about that issue of having anything shiny, you can never get in close enough to any of these edges to finish getting the shine out of that last little bit around the bridge. So do everything first, then just come back and scrape underneath, and I'll show you that when we get ready to glue the bridge on. But don't try and think you can put your bridge on and finish everything. It'll look terrible. So there we go. Anyway, you saw the whole process now, from beginning to put on the true oil right up to when we hit it after 4 or 5 coats and let it dry well. I'd let it dry, a couple good days if you can, just to let it expel the solvents in there. And boy, this is a nice finish. So there you go. That's my little lecture on finishing. And the next thing we're going to do is get back to working on our necks here. Matter of fact, this is the neck for this guitar with the bound fingerboard that matches the binding here. So I got to fit this now, but we'll start fitting that, and that'll go on there about like so. So anyway, we're getting close to, once our neck's on, we'll be able to start stringing it up and see what we got. So we're getting close here. Now the next thing is we'll start working on the neck again, and you should be this far along from earlier videos. You should have all this much done with the overlay and the fretting, and I haven't finished my fret ends yet, but that'll come next. And then I'll start showing you next about how to carve the neck. So again, if you've been following along by now, you should have your fingerboard on with the frets in it. Okay, kids, if you like and use or find these videos interesting, educational, informative, or maybe just entertaining because you're up late at night, we'd love to have you support us. There's a few ways you can do that. One is click the subscribe button below. That helps YouTube know what we're doing and that we're serious about this. Also, you can hit that bell icon, which tells you when the next videos are coming out. We're going to try and get at least one out a week now that we're up and running here. Also, a good way to support us is become a patron over at our Patreon account, and again, there's a link below for that. Patreon's a cool way that you can sign up and give, $5 a month or $10 or whatever you feel is worth it. If you're using these videos to actually build a guitar and find it interesting and fun, please support us through Patreon. That's I wish I could do this completely for free, but it takes money and time away from my other regular job. So it's a big undertaking, and any support you could send this way is great. So it's all been very fun so far for me, and I hope you guys are having fun at this as well, and we greatly appreciate all your support, so thanks.